for the Tuesday, September 8th, 2009 meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency. Ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Agency members: Friedman.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chairman Draymond.
Here. And could we hear your report, please?
The agenda for the September 8, 2009 regular meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Thursday, September 3, 2009 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you very much. And could we have the next item, please?
The approval of minutes of the regular agency meeting and the joint meeting of the council and the agency held on Tuesday, September 1, 2009.
Right, and I believe we had agency member and council member Friedman was out for both the joint meeting and the agency meeting. So could I have a motion with that correction or adjustment or amendment?
I'll move the minutes with that. Second.
Okay. And the minutes will stand approved as amended. Our next item?
At item 5 are oral communications.
And I have one. Sorry, go ahead.
Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the agency may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The matter may be referred to staff through the executive director for investigation and report.
Okay. Thank you very much. I have one speaker card, but it is not for oral communications, so we will close oral communications and move on to the next item.
At item 6A is Director of Development Services regarding concept of designating a creative media and design district within the San Fernando Road Corridor redevelopment project area. At 6A1 is a motion providing direction to staff.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, let's go to the Director of Development Services, Bill Lansford.
Rita, can you put up our presentation? Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, a few weeks ago, you had asked us to look into the concept of creating a media and design district. And we've done just that, and we're back here to report to you on our findings. We explored other cities, what we have in our own city, as well as different design ideas and what people are doing. And if I can get our projector to work, we'll have some very nice images for you.
That is to say, Mr. Lansford, if you can't get it to work, that they will not be nice images?
A wing and a prayer, Mr. Chairman, a wing and a prayer. The idea of a creative media and design district in the San Fernando Road Corridor is really the concentration of creative uses, creative industry, and using the synergy of clustering those companies to our benefit as well as theirs. We're wanting to look to put in place strategies and programs to implement what really is a policy on your part to say this is the type of industry cluster that we would like to have in this area. We think that it is a natural progression from our 1992 redevelopment plan where we sought to encourage technology, and in this day and age, entertainment is technology, technology is creativity. We also think that it is a natural progression of the investment that this agency has made in the Disney projects with DreamWorks and KABC 7. We found a lot more than just those large, what we're calling anchors, and we'll talk about those in just a minute. Really, bottom line is we have some resources here that we would like to tell the world about and improve our image as a city that supports creative industry. The creative industry cluster, this is a listing of what the Los Angeles Economic Development Corporation and the Otis Foundation used in a recent study to determine the economic impact of those industries. They're listed for you there, architecture. What is in the box? Communication arts, especially graphic design and display, digital media, and furniture and home furnishings. Those are very well represented in Glendale amongst this list. But that's generally what makes up at least what they used as the creative cluster. We tried to get some images of what it looks like. What does a creative district look like? And it can take on many different faces. This is a collage of images from Culver City, which is one city that is very active in this. It features up here, you'll see new construction, adaptive reuse, and the use of existing building stock, sometimes just with a facade facelift. These are images, again, using new construction, campus setting. This is in Brooklyn, Dumbo. I believe this is Santa Monica? West Hollywood. Los Angeles. So it takes on many different looks, but it all is the same, that clustering and concentration of creative uses. Another image is campus, street front, singular buildings. Why do this? This industry has high-paying jobs. We've always looked at manufacturing as being that high-paying blue-collar job that we did not want to lose. The creative industries are starting to replace those, not necessarily smokestack industry, but dirtier manufacturing with high-paying jobs in the creative industries. Their businesses are complementary to what exists in the corridor now. The development of lifestyle amenities, this is what comes along with it when you get a concentration of creative minds. That might be restaurants, it might be galleries, it might be housing types, live workspace, but things that would help revitalize the corridor and make it into something that would be consistent with the identity. Last, with that concentration of creative minds, we think that brings a higher attention and demand for art in general to the city of Glendale. As we looked through the corridor, we really found that the creative industries run the gamut from the big multimedia, Disney, DreamWorks, KBC7, to the home improvement. We've seen a small node pop up where home improvement stores already are locating next to each other and they're providing design services. To digital, Spectral Motion is a new special effects company that is moving into Glendale. To smaller boutique shops, Clear Image Printing is representative of our graphic arts and printing. Technicolor is located in Glendale. And they're starting to branch out and do other things in the creative industries. This is a little difficult. I apologize, especially for people that are watching at home. But we pulled from the sales tax and use tax producers in the San Fernando Road corridor, those business types. We bolded graphic design, home furnishing, those others, as kind of the leaders in that category. What's a little misleading is media services. We show 27 businesses, although Disney Imagineering shows up as one when they have thousands of workers. So a little bit misleading. But there's approximately 267 businesses in this creative industry that are generating sales tax revenue. We think that's around a total of 750. We're using data from the Verdugo Job Center to really narrow down and identify who is here and what the number of employees are. We think that it's around 13,500, that they have a quarterly payroll of over $200 million. So that is a tremendous economic element. We were curious, where are they located? This is a picture of the corridor. We tried to condense it so we can get it all together. The corridor is quite long, which is an issue for us, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But there really is no concentration. They're scattered all throughout the corridor, and you can see from the different push-colored pins and the key category key that some of them group together and some of them are mixed up. In Glendale, looking at what is creative space, what did it look like if you look back to those images? We have new development. Again, these are the major anchors, ABC, DreamWorks, and Walt Disney Company in new development. We have opportunities for adaptive reuse. The Sealy's building should start construction, 40 creative units and some live workspace. The Disney Company will rehab the old terminal building to be something of a creative celebration, and so adaptive reuse already exists, and there's opportunity for more. Existing building stock, we're seeing companies move. Color Me Mine is one. Many of these have taken advantage of our facade program to locate here. The picture above is Palladio. They are a research design firm on many different levels of retail. We looked at the current conditions that are out there. As I say, the area is quite large and it's quite long, spanning several miles from Burbank to Los Angeles. It's our primary warehouse and manufacturing location, although we have seen, not an encroachment, but some office and commercial and light industrial start to creep into what has traditionally been a heavier industrial use. The land use and zoning, we have just about every category represented in our code throughout the corridor. With the rewrite of the code in, I think it was 2006, we have created some flexibility for just about anything we would want in this creative industry. Something that we do have that not a lot of places have in their code through this flexible zoning is the ability to manufacture and sell on site. So you can have a smaller boutique, a furniture manufacturer that is then selling out of his or her store. The parking is a significant issue for us. The corridor is severely underparked because of changing from warehouse to more intense uses. However, we think that there's opportunities where properties have been perhaps underutilized that we could see new development and start to solve that parking problem. The corridor is economically stable. In 2008, it generated $4.8 million in sales and use tax. In the first quarter of 1999, it outproduced the Glendale Galleria, One, and our auto dealers. Granted, both of them are in difficult times, but it was very revealing to see how much was generated out of the corridor. And then our industrial vacancies, typically very low, less than 2%, although with some of the sublease space, that jumps up a little bit more to maybe 7%. And then with some of the vacancies we're seeing in the commercial space, commercially developed space, it's even higher than that. So there may be opportunities right away to attract creative industry business. Some of the key considerations, that opportunities, and next we'll look at challenges. We've got some big, heavy hitters in the corridor, and we should be taking advantage of that. Disney, DreamWorks, they all need people to support and serve them, their businesses, and it would be natural for them to locate in the corridor. As I said, we have found that there's quite a bit of creative industry going on, and we think that we need to go and tell the world, hey, this exists. Start to create an identity for ourselves. Want to encourage growth and expansion, both new development as well as business expansion, relocating to Glendale or expanding the business. We're seeing 3 or 4 firms that in this down economic time are looking to expand. One I told you about with Technicolor, they're looking at digital processing new ways to process those images. And then finally, lifestyle amenities. These are things that we're calling, again, restaurants, coffee houses, live workspace, perhaps nightclubs, things that would cater to the creative industry employee that will help revitalize the entire corridor. We're not without some challenges. You can read them there. I've talked about some of those. Two things we've highlighted is manufacturing job displacement. We don't want to lose high-paying manufacturing jobs to replace them with something that may not yield quite the payroll that these manufacturing employers do. And then also, as we talked about, major sales tax producers. That is a huge resource for us, and we don't want to. We only want to add to that. We don't want to attract. I would say the last thing, accommodating existing uses. This is the only place that an auto body shop can locate or conduct business in Glendale, unless they've been around for a long time. And you saw in, I think it was Color Me Mine, there was an auto use on either side of it. We need to be careful to allow those uses that we want to continue, that we want to provide for Glendale's community, to coexist. And frequently, creative industry will go to those places where rent is a little bit cheaper, and they're fine coexisting with other industrial uses. In terms of next steps, we have a little bit more digging to do that we want to do through some data with the Verdugo Job Center and really understanding what makes up this cluster. We would like to visit with the brokers and get their take on it and see, is this something that they think is viable, and could they bring these types of uses? Find out what are other cities doing. Spend some time with Culver City. Develop incentives for business to locate here or developers to build new for this type of use. As I said before, we have a huge engine in Disney, DreamWorks, and KBC. We should be taking advantage of that and attracting those service providers and supporting firms for their business to the corridor. Promote the corridor. And brand it, give it an identity so that people understand what it is that we have here and are likely to locate here. And then finally, encourage those lifestyle amenities that we talked about earlier. That, combined with our staff report, is our presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lansfame. Appreciate that, and I appreciate the work of your staff. Let me ask my colleagues what their preference is. We do have one speaker card. Would you like to get into some discussion on this topic and then go to the public and come back, or shall we go directly to the public?
Pleasure.
All right. Let's hear from our speaker, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Pamela Aloya? Elye. Okay.
I'm Pam Elye. I live in Glendale, and I own a prop house, History for Hire. We've had it for 25 years in North Hollywood, and I can't remember the last time I was so excited about something the city could possibly do for us. My lease is up in March of 2010. This isn't going to happen soon enough for me to take advantage of it, but my lease will be up in 2015 also. And this is such a tremendous opportunity to help all these small businesses like myself to cluster together. I mean, Phil said it so well. For us, it's location. We need to be next to the studios. My biggest client is Warner Brothers. I also work with Universal, and I work with Disney. And if I'm too physically far away from them, I will definitely lose business. So this has tremendous opportunity for us, and I can't thank you enough for considering this. I also want to thank both Ken and Phil. I mean, both of them have come to my prop house to see the kinds of things and needs that we have as a small business. So thank you very much for considering this.
Thank you. I have a couple questions for you. One is, what made you open your business in North Hollywood rather than Glendale initially?
Rent. I mean, 25 years ago, we actually started in our apartment in Hollywood. The very first film we ever did was Platoon. And so we had to find cheaper rent. And what we've seen over the past 25 years is, remember, the studios used to have I can just talk about prop houses right now, major prop houses on the lot. Then that space became better used for them to use it for office space. They could gain more revenue. So what would happen is it would move to the next city and the next city. And after a while, we started seeing things moving out to Santa Clarita. That's really too far. So businesses that do what I do, North Hollywood is about as far as you should go.
It's the rent you're talking
Big
about.
pardon?
But the factor is the rent.
Well, the fact is the rent. I mean, I'll tell you, a business like mine, we're at 33,000 square feet. We have our rent with Triple Net is a little over $30,000 a month. There was another prop house, I think a lot of you have heard about, 20th Century Props. It just went out of business. They were at $100,000 a month. So it's the amount of space that you need for the business that we have.
And two last questions I have for you. One is, if you don't mind telling me.
No, I'll tell anything.
Okay.
No secrets.
About how many people do you employ?
We have 13 people full-time. If we're working on a big show, that could go up to 25.
Okay. And lastly, is Omega still in business?
Oh, yes. Omega Cinema Props. They're fantastic. Yeah. In fact, something like this could be so good for someone like Omega, because Omega has one loading dock, a huge company like that you can do returns from. Their other loading dock where you pick up can only accommodate 3 trucks. They might have a line of 10 trucks in the middle of the street waiting to pick up and load. If you develop an area like this with loading docks, good industrial support, people will definitely come to it. And we all know each other. We would all like to have our businesses next to each other. We support each other.
Okay, I guess you stimulated one more question, which is always a good thing.
Yes.
And that is, what do you think is the likelihood of a place like Omega, which is very, very large, moving to Glendale in concert with, say, History for Hire and...
I could see them absolutely doing it. Off the top of my head, I don't know if they own their buildings or they lease. If they lease, I would say absolutely moving. Most businesses that do what I do lease. There's one or two bigger ones, but they're far out there in Sun Valley. They chose to buy there, and it definitely has impacted their business.
Thank you. Let me turn to my colleagues.
Yeah, I have one question.
Agency Member Friedman.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you wanted to be in close proximity. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit more? What types of businesses do you find in your industry that are clustering, and why? And also, what sort of amenities do you think that you would attract, or what amenities would you like to see to help you decide on an area?
Definitely. I can tell you in the area where I am in North Hollywood, you have, I'm going to tell you the businesses that are close to me. There's History for Hire. We're next to RC Vintage, which just recently moved there, signing a 10-year lease. Alley Cats, Lenny Marvin Enterprises, Gibbons Limited. There's a lot of studios that take up temporary space there to build sets. We're all businesses that essentially work with the same art department. For us, what we really need is we need loading docks, we need businesses, industrial space that's between 10,000 to 60,000 square feet. Although if you had somebody like Omega, I think you're probably talking, what do you think, 120,000 for about 120,000 square feet for someone like Omega. It doesn't really matter if it's stacked space or if they're just tilt-up buildings. I think one of the other good things about our business is we're not tremendously fussy about how the building looks like or how it's made. So we're not looking for extremely well-landscaped corridors and things like that. That's always nice. But if you put a business like me next to the freeway or next to the train tracks, I'm fine with it. I'm next to the train tracks right now in the airport. Did that answer your question, or...?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, terrific.
Other questions? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
That is the only speaker card I have. If there's anyone in the audience...
I'm so sorry. Can I interrupt again? So Debbie just came late, and she can speak much more better. Much better. Can she say something? Can I fill out a little card for her?
And afterward.
All
Why
right,
don't you come on up, and we can fill out a card afterward.
If I can introduce Debbie Humella, she creates a book called Debbie's Book, and what it is, it's a source book that talks about all the businesses that support the art department in the entertainment industry. So what this will do...
I apologize, I'm late.
That's all right. Could you just state your name for the record?
My name is Debbie Humella. I published a book for the last 30 years called Debbie's book, and I print anywhere between 15 and 17,000. I distribute them. I'm a self-publisher over the years for East Coast, West Coast. What I have is a collection that started out in the 70s of small businesses that pretty much focus on the entertainment industry as far as still photographers, art department, coordinators, film, television. It's the odd and unusual. And I have a collection of lots of small businesses. I have books for you that you're welcome to have for your businesses. What I've done in it is, since a lot of people come from out of town, they'll come from New York, they'll come from out of state, they'll come to Hollywood and they'll always call me up and say, where do I find this, where do I go? And so I've kind of gone through this as, like a general map here, but I also clustered over the years districts and areas. I probably know more about prop houses and small businesses than anyone here. What I physically do is I don't drive up and down the street and sell advertising. I have to go and qualify a business. There are some people that if they're way out in Rancho Cucamonga, I'll say, there's no use you coming in my book because no one will come there. The thing about them clustering so much over the years is in Hollywood, is they moved to North Hollywood because of the rent, but also because the production of people have a little time. And if they know they can go to a certain area and they can zip through the prop houses and get what they want and get out, it's time. Parking, access, loading docks. It's not supposed to be pretty. They don't really care because they don't want the public to go to these places. It's not something that's going to be pretty. They want to go inside. They know what they're looking for, and it's got to be easy access. And if they can hit 2 or 3 of these prop houses along the way, then they can certainly get their job done and get back on the road. It's changed a lot over the years from where people had to physically drive there. Now it's, you've got internet, people can email things, but people still need to drive and look at things, and it's a personal relationship. So small businesses from wardrobe, costumes, prop houses. Prop houses have the largest because they have such a volume that they're dealing with. But you have a lot of vendors that just specialize in things like dyeing clothing, or those that do weapons, or those that do, they'll do armor. They'll do lots of small things. If it's welding, if it's scenery, if it's shops. And so what I've done in this book is I've kind of broken it down to everything from aliens, if you need a green or a gray, or if you need backdrops. And there's lots of small businesses through here. So if you have any other questions, I'd be more than glad to ask. But
do any of my colleagues have any questions? Mr. Quintero.
I don't have a question, but I want to say that I used your book for many, many years.
Oh, thank you, Mayor.
That was in the placement business. We always had your book and referred people, called the employers and referred people to the...
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, maybe you used the book to have armor made for these meetings. So.
Or that Halloween party. It's event people also use it. It's a little odd. No one ever really actually sees my face though, so they don't really think that there's a Debbie. But
we know better now.
Oh dear.
Any other comments from the agency members?
Well, now I know who Debbie is because I've used your book too.
Pardon?
Now I know who Debbie is. I see her face.
Oh dear.
I've used it too.
Well, you see, if you look way on the back page, this is kind of a long one. There's a picture of my husband and me proofing the book here, but it's a monkey, so people really don't know, except for you, what I really look like. But the thing about a lot of the businesses, and I know that DreamWorks and a lot of the larger businesses over here that are doing in post-production or animation, it is getting Glendale, Long Beach, and Los Angeles, someone said to me, are the main cities of Southern California. And that came from a friend of mine who's a vendor, and I said, really? As I told him that I was going to come and meet Pam here today. And he said, yeah, Glendale is really a very big center, and I think instead of prop houses and places trying to go out and get further away, I think it should become closer, and I'm always anxious to tell people that it needs to be close and to the home.
Agency Member Friedman.
Yeah, you made me think of a few other questions. First, I'm really glad you're here, so thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Now, we were talking, Pam has a prop house, and a lot of her comments were directed towards those types of businesses, but you have a lot of experience in the whole range of entertainment-related businesses. So when we're talking about this corridor idea, it's not just for the more, the physical production, but also more of the creative content. It could be all kinds of things. So I'm wondering, first of all, Is Glendale known in the entertainment community for being one of those clusters?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's, you're Burbank, Glendale, Hollywood, it is that area through there. And if you look at a map, that's where they target. A lot of people fly in here and you'll say, okay, my stage is over here. But it is one of those clusters because it's Southern California and there are so many small little businesses that are around through here. Yeah, absolutely. You are on the map.
Good to know.
Yeah, it's not Akron, Ohio. And even though if someone is using or people say the film is going elsewhere, they come back here to the sources here. And having places that are close together makes it a lot easier for people to use. And cost. A lot of people are also more secure because if they're closer together, some will say, well, I'm in need of some scenery being built and a backdrop. Well, go over here, and you'll notice that a lot of things are very close together in a lot of the areas, and it's because of that need that they can just hop from one to another. It's really important. Time is the issue.
Okay. John. Oh, sorry. Mr. Najari.
So obviously you've heard what we're trying to do.
Yes.
And do you have any specific suggestions for us to develop this cluster? We've got maybe 30% of our corridor in creative industries. What can you advise us to do, our staff, with regard to this? Is it marketing, promotion?
It's marketing directly to those businesses that this is something that they can come to and be affordable, and it's an easy, and it's, marketing it to a lot of those small businesses that are 1 or 2, 3 people, 10 people. Sometimes and letting them know that you're building this, letting them know that this is available and that easy access. I've seen a lot this last year of, say, antique dealers. Why is it that antique dealers have these buildings with co-ops in them with 20 or 30 people? Because they can't afford to go out and buy something big, but they can co-op together. And if you have access with not only for large prop houses, but maybe small buildings that will have enough for a co-op for someone who is a dyer, someone who is dealing with small costumes, someone who does linen, someone who, that are small, that they can come together, that too makes it accessible and more intriguing for them because they know that word of mouth and working with one person, they're doing a show that they can all come together and be there. I'm not sure if I'm really clear. I'm not a great speaker, but...
Do any other municipalities or neighborhoods advertise in your book for come to NoHo or come to...
No, and that's not... it wouldn't really benefit them because I work with people within the industry. I don't do clusters. I search out the small businesses that are odd and unusual, and they need to have a certain criteria to get in my book. I don't drive up and down the street in La Cienega and sell an ad to every rug dealer. That's not my purpose because they really don't understand the speed and the pace. I try to not encourage those people who think, oh, if I get in this book, then people will use me. It doesn't work that way. I need to go out and physically see them, see the whites of their eyes that they're real. I don't put brokers in the book. I can get someone that my users are brokers, and they want to know the person that can build that inflatable bra that's 4 blocks long. And that they know that they can find someone.
What movie was that in?
Well, I'll show you the picture here if you look under inflatables. I think it was for a Japanese commercial. It's one of those things that I love on page 147, that it's... So I always like to have those small vendors that actually know what they're doing. To go around and sell development areas is not what I do. What it is to make sure that people know where to get them. And a lot of times they say, I wish they were closer. This person's here, this person's here. I've got event people downtown L.A. They wish they were come a little bit closer, but it's, finding a building is really tough in this town. Finding space is difficult. And not, there is a handful or less of prop houses, and if you look on the back, there's a lot of listing of vendors in here that I do by prop houses that own their own building. And I'm old, so I've been around a long time. I started this in 1978, so...
All right. Do we have any other questions? Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much for letting me speak, sir.
Absolutely. And if someone could fill out a card, just... Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, let me go back to my colleagues. Questions for staff or comments? Let me start on this side. Mr. Weaver.
Nobody comments. It's a good direction to go.
Okay.
I know it's the only one cluster of the San Fernando Valley, mainly over Burbank, North Hollywood. And with the entertainment centers that we have here in Glendale, makes sense to try to do this kind of a clustering. So I support it, whatever steps that staff thinks we ought to take to further investigate it, market it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Quintero.
Yes, I also would like to continue to go down this track. I have a question or idea. You put together this map that's quite graphic in terms of the creative industries within the San Fernando Road corridor. I wonder if we could put together another map that would break down some of the current uses, meaning some of the automotive uses in a certain part of the corridor at the south end. I mean, you can tell what business uses are there by simply driving through and looking, but it would be, I think, desirable to get some feel for. Then another, I mean, this could go on forever, but another idea would be some of the square footage in terms of the current buildings there. That might be of some use too. In other words, the parcels. How big are some of the different parcels as they're currently put together? And then finally, I think we have to make sure that all of the property owners and business owners, but especially the property owners along San Fernando Road, are on board and are notified. And you know how rumors get started. And the last time we attempted this with the planning department, I know we had lots of property owners and business owners that were concerned, that just generally didn't know what it was that we were trying to do when we changed some of the zoning. So we want to make sure that they're...
Phil, yes.
If I could just... We're not out looking for land or to relocate somebody. This is merely a policy that we're asking you. This is the cluster that we would like to see there. And so as vacancies occur or as development come in and is proposed, that they are leaning that way. Those are the people we want to attract. We don't want to relocate anybody. As we said, the corridor right now is very strong economically, and we don't want to tinker with that balance.
Well, I know we don't, but I know how property owners get together for breakfast, and all of a sudden someone mentions something, and then pretty soon it's out of control. The last time around, we weren't going to do anything to harm anyone's property values or establish businesses, yet we got all kinds of feedback from people. I just want to make sure, once again, we're proactive.
Will do. Okay, thank you, Mr. Quintero. Ms. Friedman.
Okay, well, I want to first of all thank Mr. Lansafane and his staff for all the hard work that they've done on this project, and also Mr. Hagani in the planning department, who I know assisted and had several meetings on this. As a lot of you know, this is a proposal that I have been talking about since before I was elected to City Council or Redevelopment Agency about 5 months ago. It's a proposal that I campaigned on very heavily, and I can tell you that it's something that when I speak to people in the community about, they really understand. And one of the primary reasons that they understand it is because so many people in our community work in these industries. So to them, it means having jobs that they might have a chance of commuting to in their own city. It means retaining and attracting the business that maybe brought them to Los Angeles in the first place. It's copacetic with, I think, planning on a state level, because it's at a time where our state legislature has been passing bills to try to retain the entertainment industry in California, to keep it from leaving California. And it's also something that takes advantage of the unique zoning that we have in the San Fernando corridor, being mixed-use zoning that allows retail, manufacturing, and housing, and just about any other use you can think of in the same parcels. which really allows you to have businesses that range everything from prop houses like that we heard about, to the people who manufacture the props, to people who retail, to businesses that work in post-production, that have creative types of jobs like we see at Disney and DreamWorks. All of that in harmony, so that they can all work together and that every aspect of these industries can work together. And as well, because we have manufacturing in this corridor, we can attract all sorts of design businesses. We already have a lot of these home improvement businesses, tile shops, so we can take advantage of that. So what we're really talking about is the whole gamut of the creative industries, not just entertainment, but also design, manufacturing, graphic design. Before we came into this meeting, Mr. Lanzafame told me that this has been a very good exercise for his department, because before we went into this process, the city was not really aware of all of the types of businesses that were in this corridor. And it's fascinating when you look at the breakdown to see how many of them are already creative types of businesses. So as part of this, preparing for this report and investigating, Mr. Lanzafame and myself have been reaching out to people in the development community, to developers who are maybe interested in building in this area, in developing for uses like Ms. Ellier's business, maybe building for them. And what's been most surprising to me, and maybe to Phil, was how many of them didn't really know this corridor existed and didn't know that DreamWorks and Disney had such a large presence in Glendale. So we've been really missing out on a very large opportunity of branding our area and attracting businesses to an area that already has the seeds of those businesses, but has never really taken hold in the mind of the entertainment industry or the design community as being sort of a hotbed of that business. And in this economy, we can do anything in this business to help small businesses, to help bring in tax dollars. It's to attract new business into the area and to help the current businesses by bringing in more of that kind of economic vitality. And what also struck people in the community when I talked about this was that these types of businesses, besides bringing in high-paying jobs and the types of jobs that people move to Los Angeles to get, it also brings a certain type of cultural capital, because these are arts-related businesses, and these are people who are creative people who are in this area because they want to work in a creative industry. So it brings a sort of cultural capital that a lot of other manufacturing businesses don't bring. So it's not our intent to push out any existing businesses, but let's face it, manufacturing is suffering in this economy. And we as a city must have a plan in place for, as businesses leave the area and leave our city, what we're going to replace them with. We need to be, I believe, as proactive as we can be if we're going to create this identity and brand this area, to also help assist these businesses to locate here. And that's where having this be a redevelopment area creates such a unique opportunity. Because it's one of the 2 redevelopment areas in the city, we have an entire department that can help match small businesses with the right spaces, find a group of these creative businesses, put them together so that they can have that sort of cooperative experience of being clustered in a building that any one of them would be too small to lease on their own. We can help team them up with developers who could develop underused parcels for these types of industries. If you look at the photos or you drive down San Fernando now, what you'll see is that a lot of the area is underdeveloped. Most of the buildings there, the vast majority, are 1-story. They could be 2-story buildings and have twice the amount of business space. There are open-air parking lots that are underutilized, that we could have a lot more activity going on. And all of that type of activity could be geared towards creative industries, bringing more tax dollars into the city, providing more places for our residents who are already in these industries to work. That's what the redevelopment department was created for. That's the type of thing that it does best. So not only do we have an area that's already geared towards these businesses, but we have a department that stands ready and that's able to go out and recruit these sorts of businesses in arts and entertainment and design and architecture and all of these creative types of businesses, put put them together with the development community and really grow this into something that would be an economic engine for the city. So I'm very excited that we're looking at this today. I hope that the agency supports it. I think it's going to take a while. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but with the agency behind it and the redevelopment department behind it and planning, it's something that I believe we could really build on to be an engine that will continue to grow on the work that's been done with Disney and DreamWorks and make this an economic engine for the future of Glendale.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Friedman. Mr. Najari.
Mr. Lands of Fame, I'd like you to know that there are some people who believe that there is no finer artistic work than the man who repaints your fender to match it exactly as the quarter panel.
I can give you a reference, too.
In the last, I'm not sure if you have this information, but do you have any information on the trend, the historic trend of the businesses that would fit into the creative, that we classify as creative businesses over the last whatever time period you may have some information on?
I don't. We started looking into this, and we were looking at current sales and use tax, and then using data provided by the Verdugo Job Center, we think we can expand that and find those businesses that aren't. We could certainly use data that they've had to go back and look at what types of trends. When did they start moving here? I'm assuming that's what you're asking.
Right.
And at what pace are they moving here? We could look
Because
at
I think that's important as you come back to us, as you prepare to come back to us at a later date. If there's already a surge of the businesses, creative businesses moving here, I think it gives you a certain idea that what we have is very accommodating. And on the other hand, if it appears as though there seems to be an exodus of those businesses, I think we need to realize there are some things we need to stop and change right away. I agree with everything that agency member Friedman said, but I would like to call out Hassan Harani. Not call up, but call out. Because I think a lot of the potential that we have here is due to the rezoning efforts that were put forth on San Fernando Road. And they, of course, I think I met you. You were a junior planner. Elaine Wilkerson was the chief of planning, and I think it even started before with Mr. Glazer.
Yes, the San Fernando Road rezoning started 10 years prior to the final adoption of it, actually.
And this was a lot of hard work. I think during those 10 years, it wasn't exactly clear that the potential for a creative district was there. But I think what you helped us see is that we need to maintain some flexibility in the types of things that can go there. And there was a lot of the live work on the commercial nodes and all the flexibility issues that we talked about. And it wasn't easy. I remember some of the nose-to-nose discussions you had with the property owners who were very concerned. They were afraid that a change of zoning or an encouraging of a certain other type of business or use would deflate their values. There were some very vocal brokers who were in those meetings who had their own ideas, and you stood your ground and held to your planning principles and had the vision, which brings us to where we are today, and we're not really fine tuning, but we're placing a piece in that vision that you had. So I remember those days where there were some heated meetings, a lot of fears, a lot of accusations, but I guess here you go, that your planning instincts were right, and hopefully they are right. You feel good about this venture that we're moving towards. But I just wanted to thank you because I know the background to all this, and if we were still zoned industrial and manufacturing, we wouldn't even be able to have this discussion about putting different types of flexible uses in. So,
Thank you very much for saying that. And I'd like to actually really acknowledge that everything that I started with was already there. The community members and the advisory group had been working for a number of years, and all the material was really there. It was a matter of pulling it together, and I truly appreciated the input. And some of the best resolutions came out of those face-to-face arguments that people really had opposing ideas, and we managed to come up with ideas that didn't exist before as a result of that, and that was really valuable.
And so as a result, I think we have an automatic buy-in by many of the property owners, because you and your staff and members of that group went through these scenarios and the what-ifs and how-abouts and all that. So I think really it paves the way for Phil Lanzafame to put his creative minds to work and help us present this vision of Ms. Friedman's to the next step. So.
Yeah, we'd be happy to assist.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Najarian. Thank you, Mr. Hagani. Okay, I have some questions also. Because and these are some of the things that, well, first let me start by saying I definitely and very obviously support this direction, moving this direction. However, God bless you. However, I do have some questions and some concerns, and they are in the nature of some instruction to staff, because there's some information that I'm going to want to hear about and see as we go forward. I want to make sure that we're clear as to whether we're talking about the creation of a physical district, a cluster, whether we are setting out to create that, or whether we're talking about a branding or marketing operation, or both. And there's a reason that clarity needs to be brought forth, and it relates to what Mr. Quintero was talking about earlier. Is not just the individual vendors we're talking about, but the public in Glendale and the property owners need to know exactly what it is we're doing. There's been a lot of discussion about an arts district, a media district, design district. A lot of the discussion early on was a cacophony of confusing voices because, for example, just the word arts was in there. It is now, in this business agenda, referred to as a creative media and design district, and that's a very good thing. Because immediately you were hearing in the beginning, well, are we talking about putting movie theaters there? Are we talking about putting live theater there with the Super Chief roaring right through the middle of it and shaking the building? What are we talking about? So some of these are for clarity that I asked some of these questions. I want to know what kind of vacancies we have in this area. Do we have vacancies? Because otherwise we're talking, and how much of this property is city or agency owned, how much is private? Because otherwise we are strictly talking about this process through attrition. So that's one thing I'm going to want to know about. Because we can talk about underutilized land, and I agree with Agency Member Friedman. Just a simple drive out there tells you, if you have a notion of anything about redevelopment, you understand that surface parking lots are not particularly efficient use of land, et cetera, one story versus two. However, if these are privately owned properties, we can create incentives, but that's about it. So I also want to know, what are we looking at in terms of vacancies? How much of this property is privately owned? You're talking about a huge, huge area. Mr. Lanzafame, how many square acres are we talking about out there?
There's 750, and that's one of the problems that we have. You just can't wrap your arms around something and say, that's it. Each area has some little twist of its own identity.
Right. Let's see. Another thing I'm going to want to know about is some of the businesses that have been talked about today. Industry-related businesses or vendors or small or large businesses that are coming here. Are our rents lower in that area than, say, than North Hollywood or some of the areas where a good many of these existing businesses, we're using the word cluster, where they cluster now? And so that's another question. I'm going to need to know something, because even one of the speakers who was up here was talking about, with the prop house, was talking about the fact that that the primary issue is rent, secondary issue is location and being sort of a synergy between the different businesses. I'd also like to, while you're doing some of your research and moving down this line, know about some of the businesses. You can use Debbie's book. That's actually the name of it, Debbie's book, without an apostrophe after Debbie, before the S. But perhaps Ms. Friedman can also help with a name of some of these businesses, and simply contact them and find out, what their issues are. In other words, why are they not in Glendale, in this area already? Is it rent? Is it they just don't know about us? And I agree, that is a big issue. I mean, that doesn't surprise me one bit. I mean, I still get phone calls from people who say to me, you're doing some event up in Montrose. Where's Montrose? How long have you lived in Glendale? Oh, my whole life, 30 years. And take Glendale Avenue and go north. Just keep going till you'll run into it. But in any case, so that would be something that I'd like to know about. I want to congratulate agency member Friedman, because I think this is the first time in conducting a meeting of actually sitting in any city meeting where I've heard the word copacetic used. So I commend her for that. It's a favorite word of mine, so I love that. All right. I'd also like to know the businesses that are on this map in the presentation. Ignore my notes all around, but this map here, we do need something larger than that, because I'd like to know. I mean, for example, it says art galleries and studios, 3.37% of the picture out there. What are the galleries that are out there? And are they galleries attached to studios, or what exactly is out there? That the survey that you've done as a result, and your staff as a result of Ms. Friedman kickstarting this process is great. But I'd also like to know, what are some of these businesses and where exactly are they located? You mentioned something that was slightly off topic, but it was part of your presentation, that Disney and their work on the air terminal is going to create a creative celebration. What in the world is that? Exactly. What does that mean, in other words?
It will probably be what they talked about in the entitlement phase was a visitor center that talked about the different creative minds and innovations that happened in the area, both through aerospace and as well as those of the Disney company.
Okay. All right. And lastly, and I touched on it, but I truly want some input on it from you, even if it's just a sentence or two when you come back, and that is, why do you suppose in businesses in this industry, or business entities in this industry, whether it's this industry, media, entertainment, visual arts, graphics, etc., are not coming to Glendale right now? Because I think we really need, if we're going to talk about a branding operation or a marketing operation as a component of this, that's kind of a key question.
If you'd like my response now.
No, I'd like you to bring some of that back for the agency.
Sure.
Okay? And beyond that, I would like to again thank your staff, Mr. Lansfame and Mr. Hagani. I'd also like to thank our colleague, Ms. Friedman, for bringing this forward. It's a critical element, especially in this economy, but even the economy aside, it's a critical element in reinvigorating an area of our city that has definite need. And to the extent we can do this, I think it's super. So I want to also commend her for following through on a campaign platform that you were working with, and actually took it out on a test run, an extensive test run around this city when you ran for office. So I certainly know that there is support for it. Are there any other comments from the dais or staff? Mr. Lansfame and Mr. Quintero.
Well, I just wanted to add that while you're working and waiting for all of these things, I think the sooner you put together a somewhat of an inventory in terms of some of the square footage of buildings, the quicker you'll be able to respond to any potential company that might be interested.
And Mr. Lansman, let me add something to that, because between what Mr. Quintero is saying and what Ms. Friedman has been saying, and I think Mr. Najarian as well, is a sort of proactive approach to this. For this to work, there's going to have to be a proactive approach from your department. It isn't just identifying businesses and doing an inventory and seeing could they match up. It's also then going out and helping Glendale to get its piece of the pie by actively contacting businesses in these industries and media to say, here's what we have. So if we march down the road of this branding exercise or marketing exercise, I wouldn't want it to be so generic as just to say we're doing a mailing that says these things exist. We're in a competition, this city, with a lot of other areas and regions and municipalities that are way ahead of us in terms of seeking out this kind of these kinds of operations and helping them to locate in their city. So we would need an active face-to-face component with this. So part of it is a sales job, and that's something that would have to come from somewhere for this to work. So, okay. Yes, Mr. Lance.
Just one last comment. Much of the research was done by our student summer intern, Mina Pashai, who's here. And I would like to thank her for it because she really did dig into a lot of different databases to give us this information. She's a student down at UC San Diego and will be leaving us soon, so we'll need to replace that resource, but we will somehow carry on. But special thank you to Mina.
Duly noted. Thank you. All right. If there are no other comments, let's move on to the next item.
Are there any agency member or staff comments?
I have one. Mr. Lansfame, I brought you a little prop from a recent visit to Long Beach. We have many assets in this city, and in the hope of one day addressing the comment I think that was made by Mr. Quintero at one point, that when you open the Auto Club tour book, that the only thing that is in, or used to be in there, this predates the Americana, Mr. Lemo, is Forest Lawn. Of course, now it seems that that's the thing most in the news at the moment.
Right.
However, we have, with the addition of the Americana at Brand, quite a few assets of interest to people, both in terms of retail and recreation and restaurant and so on. Anyway, here's a brochure. I want to know why I can go to Long Beach, which is a bigger city, stop in just about any store or restaurant in the city, and find a listing of all their major retail, restaurants, recreation, and so on, and it's everywhere. It's everywhere, whether I go into Pine Street Fish or go to the Visitor Center at the Pike or the Aquarium of the Pacific or the small thrift store on the corner. I can find one of these. In Glendale, we don't have anything like this that is out there, that is city produced or city sponsored or encouraged or something. We need something like this. It also has a map, but maybe that's a part of Buy Glendale. But this is something we need, and it's nothing new. We've heard this before. We've heard it from the private sector asking. We've heard it from our colleagues talking about it over the years. We need to do this, in my view. So can we? I'm going to pass this on to you and ask you if you could. Maybe it's something related to Buy Glendale. Are there any other comments, staff or agency comments? No. All right. I don't think we have any new business, so is there a motion to adjourn?
All moved.
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you.